Welcome, and thanks for joining us. We'll start off, of course, with a blessing, acknowledging that we are attempting to perform a divine commandment, perhaps the most fundamental of divine commandments, studying Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. To occupy ourselves in matters of Torah. So here goes with where we're at in the text in Parshat Ki Tetze. And so we're on verse 6 here. And these are all like various and sundry commandments. I like to think that possibly what connects them all is an attempt to perform different types of acts of kindness, although sometimes it's not really obvious what the act of kindness necessarily is. But sometimes it's even kindness that when you have a punishment to do, that you do it though still with a sense of respect for the person being punished. So this is not about punishment. This is about something else entirely. Ki yikrare kan sipor lefanecha. If a nest of a bird happens before you, right? You come across the nest of a bird baderech, on your way. So you're going on your way, you come across this bird's nest. Bechol eitz, in any tree, or al haaretz, or on the ground where this nest is. Efrochim, fledglings, or beitzim, or eggs. V'ha'em rovetzet al ha'efrochim, and the mother is crouching over the fledglings, or al ha'beitzim, or over the eggs. Lo tikach, you should not take. Ha'em al habanim, you should not take the mother with the children. And it goes on with something else here. Shaleach teshalach et ha'em, you shall surely send forth the mother. Ve'et habanim tikachlach, but you can take the children, the fledglings. And hold on 1 second here, I'm sorry. Okay, give me a moment. And just to finish this off, Lema'an yitav lach, in order that it go well with you, v'ha'arachta yamim, and you shall have length of days. So this is, again, an example, there are very few, of a mitzvah which carries with it a reward, where the reward is stated. You'll live a long life if you practice this. So I think before we get into the Rashi, I don't think it's limited to this, but I think it's talking about a sense of living life without greed. I think the idea is that taking the mother and the children and the eggs, or the eggs together, represents a certain level of greediness, and that not acting in a greedy way is something very fundamental.
I think it also has to do with the distress that the mother experiences if she sees you doing this.
Yes. That's true. And I think Rashi brings that out. It's going back to where this starts. Okay. Ki yikare, if you happen on. So he says, prat the mezuman. This is the exception, right? This is to exclude if you've arranged for this. So I've mentioned this before, but when it comes to birds, we are only allowed to consume domesticated birds. Of the birds that are permitted according to the Torah, because some birds are not permissible, they also have to be domesticated. And I'm just wondering, as we're talking about this, whether that particular aspect comes out of this interpretation here, that the idea of if you've raised the birds and you want to take the bird and the eggs, if you've raised them yourself, then you can do that. But if you happen to just come across something, it's a different situation. You've had no responsibility, you've taken no personal care in raising the bird. So, going on, lo tikach ha'em, you should not take the mother. So they're saying dafka the mother, right? And this is from Tractate Chulin, ba'oda al baneha, as long as she is still on her children. So I think this is the point that Shira Beth was bringing out, is that you have to chase away the mother bird so that she doesn't see you doing what you're doing, maybe causing her added distress. I think that's based on this particular interpretation. So we were saying you have to definitely chase her away. And here we go. Leman yitav lecha, in order that it go well with you. And I imagine this is a reference again to, it's interesting because this says 140, 142. That's a lot of pages in a Gemara, but it could be, unless it's one of the larger Gemaras. So at any rate, that's the reference. Im mitzvah kala. So this is the takeaway. If a simple mitzvah, she'ein ba chesron kis, which doesn't involve any outlay of money, it doesn't cost you anything to perform this mitzvah. The whole point was you chanced upon this nest. You had nothing to do. It didn't cost you anything. You didn't build a bird nest or a box or anything. You just came across it. And there's no outlay whatsoever. Amra Torah, if in this particular case, which didn't involve any personal sacrifice whatsoever, specifically, this is chesron kis, means, spending money, outlay of money. Amra Torah, here the Torah tells you, the ma'an yitav lecha, in order that it go well with you, v'ha'arachta yamim, and you will lengthen your days. Kal v'chomer, how much the more so, the matan scharan, that there be reward given, shel mitzvot chamurot, when it comes to performing mitzvot that do involve an outlay. So, for example, we know that spending money, kosher meat is more expensive than non-kosher meat, as an example, if you're going to eat meat. So the argument, of course, is that there is a reward for these mitzvot, for performing commandments. And of course, we don't perform mitzvot so that we'll get a reward. It's just that the Torah is assuring us that this isn't a waste of time by any means. The idea, obviously, to perform mitzvot is primarily out of a love and awe of the divine, of God. But the truth is that according to the Torah, nevertheless, there is in fact a reward involved, and they're very specific about lengthening your days, and of course, going well for you could be a very generalized kind of reward, but that you'll have a good life, essentially is what it's saying. And of course, there's a lot of discussion about this as far as the reality of it, and why there's an example given where it hasn't worked out that way, at least not on an obvious way. And of course, we expect the Torah to be a foundation and a source of truth. So how do we understand these sorts of things? Regardless, this is what the Torah tells us. And frankly, I would say that by and large, I think it's actually very true. So I want to mention now, even though this is out of context, that for those of you who are familiar with the second paragraph of the teaching in the Shema, right? This essential teaching that we read twice a day, that it talks about being loyal to God, and that that basically the crops will prosper and things like that. And so it's linking nature, right, to human behavior, to loyalty to God. And while I essentially want to believe that, I always had a difficulty in saying, well, it isn't a stretch. My feeling was it was a stretch. But nevertheless, nowadays, with global warming and things happening because of human behavior, that the effect of human beings on nature, I understand this paragraph in a way that I never understood before. And how true this paragraph is, that if we don't act in this particular way, if we don't understand that our role here on earth involves stewardship, and if we only live for our own personal benefits, it'll have an effect actually on nature. So the reason why I'm bringing this up here is that there's also a statement, and I've probably mentioned it before, in Pirkei Avot, where it says, don't ever say, I don't understand this thing, or don't say, I'll never understand this thing. The statement goes on to say, because someday you may understand. And I would say that when it comes to that second paragraph of the Shema, I understand. Going on. Again, kindness, you'll see. Social kindness. Ki tivne bayit, if you build a house. Chadash, a new house. V'asita ma'akeh legagecha. You should put a parapet around the roof. So you know, basically in the Middle East, because there's relatively little rain, very often they would build their homes with flat roofs, and they would actually use the roof as a place in which to dry fruits or to dry the flax that's actually mentioned in the book of Joshua. But they would utilize the roof, and they're saying here to make sure that you build a little wall around that roof. Okay, that's the ma'akeh. Going on, v'lo tasim damim beveitecha, so that you don't place blood in your home. What do we mean? Ki yipol hanofel mimenu. When I'm going to say, you could say the word ki means because, but you could also say the word ki means if, right? Or when the one who falls off. So in other words, you could say that this is the basic premise of OSHA, right? That the need to create safe work environments is here in the Torah, that it's a very fundamental principle, and that not creating a safe work environment actually places blood guilt on you. It's that serious. So interesting, again, this parsha of Ki Tetze. So let's keep going. All right. There's another principle that comes out of here that Rashi is going to tell us. Ki tivne bayit chadash, if you build a new home. And what Rashi is going to show is that the Torah is sort of speaking in a kind of a logical progression. Here we go. Im kiyamta, if you fulfilled mitzvot shiluach hakein, that's the name of this particular commandment, is shiluach hakein, meaning sending forth from the nest, right? If you perform this mitzvah, sofcha, in the end, livnot bayit chadash, you will wind up being able to build a new home. Utekayem mitzvat ma'akeh, and you should in that case fulfill the commandment of putting this parapet around your roof. She mitzvah goreret mitzvah, because one mitzvah drags another one, another mitzvah. That when you start to perform mitzvot, you find that you are given other opportunities to perform mitzvot. And of course, there's also the reverse of it, that if you choose to commit averot, transgressions, one transgression pulls along another one with it. So again, Deuteronomy and Moses elsewhere, of course, says, I give you a choice. That as human beings, we have a choice of where we want, what direction do we want our lives to flow. V'tagia lekerem, and eventually, right, you're going to have this other mitzvah, and you shall eventually reach a vineyard, the sadeh, and a field, ulevagadim naim, and lovely clothing. I actually love the fact that we're so much part of the rag trade, and they mention it here in this commentary and in the Torah itself, that we know that having nice clothing is a great, great thing. It makes, not only does it make you feel good, but we know that it's a non-verbal way of communicating, of making a person feel honored and worthwhile, etc. It's not something that we should ignore, right? Lechach nismachu parshiot halalu. And Rashi tells us this is the reason these particular little sections are connected one to another. So he's given you a foretaste of things to come as we go ahead and continue to study this portion. Ma'aka, right, a parapet. Gader saviv lagag, he says, explains, because this word ma'aka is not that common a word. So he says gader, which is a fence around the roof. The Onkelos Tirgame Tika. So it's interesting that when we hear it as a tiyaka, that Onkelos, the Aramaic translation, translates this as tiaka, and he says kagon tik, right? So he says, and the word tik is the word for a purse. Okay, why? Shemishamer ma shebetocho. Because what does a purse essentially do? It guards whatever it contains. So again, this fence is guarding people who are up on the roof. Ki yipol hanofel. So this is a very interesting expression, right? It says, for the one who falls will fall. Ra'ui ze lipol. It may be that this person deserves to fall. Va'af al pichein, but nevertheless, lo titgalgel mitato al yadcha. Nevertheless, you should, literally, it means his death should not roll, literally, by at your hands. In other words, roll out at your hands. You, even though this person may deserve what's going to happen to him, you don't want to be the instrument of his punishment. So, okay. Now, I think he means something else here as I'm going on with the Rashi, because what it's saying here is that his death shouldn't somehow be associated with you, right? That this death, right? That someone who gets killed, right, should happen at your hands. Why? Shemegalgalin zchut al yedei zakai. And what he's saying here, if we understand this word megalgel in the way I just explained it, it means one who is zakai, innocent, right? It's not tzaddik, that would be righteous, but I believe it means one who is innocent, that you will be able to do things that give you innocence, right? Zechut actually means merit. that according to, for someone who is essentially acts in an innocent kind of way, will gain merit, right? The chov, and chov means it has to do with indebtedness, right? And a debt, al yadei chayav, by means of the one who is guilty. And again, chov and chayav, again, are related words. Chayav, in a sense, means one who is owing, right? Perhaps we could say a debt to society, perhaps. So we're getting here in this Rashi a broader picture of this particular language of the Torah here. Let's see. Okay, on to a new idea. Lo tizra karmacha. You should not seed, literally, plant your vineyard. Kilayim, with mixed seeds. So there is this mitzvah in the Torah of not planting different kinds of seeds together in a certain area. And again, this comes to emphasize the whole binary nature of creation. And this is interesting. Pen tikdash hamle'ah hazera. Okay, so tikdash, which we know normally means to sanctify, it doesn't mean to sanctify here. Okay, it means just the opposite. And Rashi's going to point out the fact that Onkelos is going to translate this word as tista'av. And tista'av means to become abhorrent. Okay, lest the male'ah would mean I imagine it comes from the word malay, but it means the azera, the seed. So I think it's talking about the harvest, I believe, right? Although here, looking at the sentence carefully, it says, Pen tikdash hamle'ah hazera asher tizra. So this is referring to the seed which you have planted. So it could mean all the seed that you have planted, utfuat hakarem, and also the produce of the vineyard. So again, Rashi is going to be very useful in terms of translating this sentence. But we understand the essential mitzvah. And by the way, I would tell you that there's a lot of ink spilt on this particular mitzvah. Okay. Kilayim, right? What does it mean? So we find it in Kiddushin and Chulin, these tractates in the Talmud. He says, so he gives you an example. Chita usaora, okay, that is wheat and barley. And I need help here. Chartzan, Lauren, what do you have as chartzan?
Just a second. So
Verse 9 in the Rashi.
yeah. Mixed variety of species, listen, even see it doesn't. Are you talking about the Rashi?
Yes, it says
Okay.
wheat, barley,
And barley.
and what's chartzan?
Then it just says parent. It says, for example, sowing the same hand throw
That's right.
Wheat and barley, then parenthetically, the sowing together of which already constitutes one prohibition. Mixed variety of seeds. Grape seeds.
Thank you. That's what it is. Thank you.
And I think that might be is grapeseed that I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. I thought it doesn't matter.
All right. So here he says b'mapolet yad, meaning with one handful. In other words, the way they would sow the seed, right, was so the idea is he goes even further. It isn't just the planting in terms of putting it into the soil. He says even the planting, understanding the planting as the act of planting, that you shouldn't take a wheat seeds and barley seeds and grape seeds and put them in your one hand, put them all together and then sprinkle them on the soil. That's a second level of prohibition. Okay. Pen tikdash. So we've got this interesting word tikdash, and normally we understand the word tikdash as referring kadesh, kadosh, etc. He says ketargumor, just as it is translated into the Aramaic, right? Tista ev, lest it become abominable, something like that. Kol davar hanitav al ha'adam, anything that is considered disgusting for a person, right? Or abhorrent, I'd even say. Bain l'shevach. So this is interesting. And the reason is the word nitav, ta'ava, is like a hunger, right? It's that kind of feeling, right? So he says here, bain l'shevach, whether it's something that is a positive ta'ava, right? A desire on the part of a person, whether it's a positive thing, kagon hekdesh, for example, this is interesting, hekdesh. So hekdesh means basically sanctified food, okay? Bain lignai, or whether it is something that is lignai would mean sort of disgusting, right? Kagon isur, something that is forbidden. So I think what he's saying here, okay, and he's understanding the word nitav as meaning something that we would not want to consume ourselves, even though the word ta'ava can also mean a desire, right?
I think you're thinking of, aren't you thinking of te'avon?
Is that with an aleph?
No, with an aleph, yeah. Aleph and a bet, aleph and vav. So nitav is usually like disgusting, but
right.
But here he says, he says repugnant.
Okay.
Repugnant, you. but it could be repugnant because I guess because it's too good for me.
No, I don't think that's where he's coming from, but thank you so much. I so appreciate your giving me a better word to translate this with. Okay, here's what he's trying to say. It is repugnant whether for a good reason. In other words, hekdesh means sanctified food that a person isn't allowed to eat because it's sanctified. So in a way, I mean, because repugnant has such a negative connotation, but nevertheless, Rashi is saying it is something we wouldn't want to have. Okay, and there are times when we don't want to have it because it's hekdesh, because it's sanctified, not because it's too good for us. So,
well, I meant too holy for me.
Yes, exactly.
It's for the priest. It's not for me.
Correct. Thank you. Absolutely. Right. Whether it's for that reason, this is the point Rashi's making, right? Or whether it's something that's disgusting, right? Or negatively, Isur simply means it's forbidden. Right? In other words, I can't have it because it's something forbidden, intrinsically forbidden. So, for example, pork. Okay, so pork, I'm not allowed to consume this. Whether with the item we're talking about could be that I'm not allowed to consume it because it's sanctified and it means it's out of my jurisdiction, or something that is I would consider disgusting, like pork. I wouldn't want to eat it anyway. Okay, nofel bo lashon kadesh. He says we use this term kadesh. Right, and he says, "Come on," and he gives an example from Isaiah chapter 65. Al tigash bi, okay, do not approach me, right? Ki kedashticha, for I am now. He says, right, I have set you apart, right, set you aside. But he uses the word kadesh, and I like to translate the word kadosh these days. It's a relatively recent translation on my part as significant. In other words, it carries a certain level of significance. And in this particular case, the significance is that separate. So when you make something significant, you separate it from other things. And that's what we're playing around with in terms of this particular word. Okay. So again, I was struggling, of course, with this word hamleah. And Rashi says, ze milui, it means a filling, some sort of being filled, the tosefet, and an additional shehazera mosif, that the seed adds. So whether he's talking about, it's still difficult for me to fully understand the point that Rashi's making here. But I think what he's talking about is the fact that when you plant seed, there's growth, and you get more stuff from it. So that the word mle'ah, in some senses, is saying that the seed, that in the process of germinating, etc., the seed is not going to produce as much. It's going to reduce that production of produce. And that's what he's referring to here. So we're going to have to stop here, but this whole process, actually, as you will see, is going to continue. And God willing, we will do it tomorrow. And I'm going to put the bookmark in there, and we're going to start, God willing, tomorrow. And of course, Rashi was saying to us that all these commandments, in a way, are linked together. And I'm going to stop the share. Okay. And we'll stop the recording.